Hi, this is Patty DePriest, and welcome to Educate Academy, brought to you by the Kentucky Academy of Technology Education. Today we're going to look at ways to use Google Slides in your classroom. This is a Jeopardy board. So the way this works is we have created links from the words and from the monetary amount to different slides that will give us the questions and then the answer, and will take us then back to the board. So if I click on the $100 question, let's say that's the one we want our students to answer, it takes me here and asks me a question. Somebody will then answer it. You can check the answer by clicking below. If that is the right answer, then you can talk about why it was right or wrong, and then you can take them back to the actual board. Then if you wanted to hit the $300 question for polygons, you can click there and get the question. Here is the answer. So it's what is a pentagon, and go back. And so all it is a bunch of hyperlinks to different slides. Let's look at this. This is a copy of Eric Kurtz's slide deck. What he does is he gives this to you as a read-only file, and you would have to go to File, Make a Copy to make it your own. So once I've done that, I can come down here to the board, and he has already actually linked everything for you. So when I click on 100, I can see that it is linked to slide 4, and slide 4 is here. When I go to slide 4, all I have to do is edit by selecting this, typing in the question, then the actual answer is also hyperlinked, and it says it's the next slide. The next slide is the answer, and then on the next slide it has a link that will take you back to the Jeopardy board, and both this and the little picture are both linked. So that takes you back to slide 3, which is the Jeopardy board. How do I create a link? All I have to do is select this. If it wasn't here, I can remove it. Okay, it's going to change the color of it because I've removed the hyperlink, but we can change that back. And so to create a link, I select it. I go up here to the insert link. I'm inserting it to a slide in the presentation. I want it to go to slide 4. And so I'm going to come down here to slide 4. Say apply. I'm going to come up here and change it. I want it the gold. Not sure if that's the right gold. No, it's more yellow. And I have it done. Now it is underlined because it has created it as a link, and I can go ahead and remove that and make it look like everybody else. The very end, you have your final Jeopardy question. So your button in the upper right hand corner on the board will link to here. So here is the topic, and you would actually change and make the topic here. You can click here to see the question. That is linked to this next slide. You would type your question here. Click here to see the answer. That's linked to this one, and there is your answer. That's all there is to it. All right, another idea is you can actually use Google Slides to create an app. Now this example, they created an app for their classroom or their school. I can click here. And so if I wanted to see information about breakfast and lunch, I can click here. It tells me what breakfast and lunch will be. I can click home. If I want to see the class notes, I click here. Here are links to all the class notes. Click home. How was that done? So what you're doing is you've actually created a Google Slide presentation, and you've changed the paper size for each slide. So you're going to go to File, go to Page Setup, and you're going to go to Custom. And you've got all these different standard ones, but on a custom, you can change it to 8 by 11.5. You can have it in inches, centimeters, points, or pixels. This is in inches, and they just clicked OK. So let's say you're doing this for, you're studying the American Revolution and what led up to it. Give your students an app that they're supposed to create for the Continental Congress, and so you could create a cover slide for your app. They go into it. They would have a slide where they have links to pertinent information that the members of the Congress needed to know. And then whatever the first little picture or icon would link to might be the next slide. All you do with a graphic, click on it. Notice it's got a link here. I do it the same way I just did the Jeopardy one. Once I've selected it, I'm going to come up to the little link here, click Insert Link, and then I'm going to choose the slide that I want to link to. The interesting thing is with these little pictures here, these are coming from a website called the Noun Project, and it is an add-on to Google Slides. And you'll see that I have it right here. And so all you have to do is when you add it is search your icons. I'm not going to do that now, but how do you add this? You can go to Get Add-ons, and then you can search and say Noun Project. Now, they do have a free and a paid version, so when you add it to Google Slides, if you don't have the paid version, you can only actually access so many icons before it will stop working. So, but it is a great way to pull in some really kind of cool, crisp little icons to use. All the links are here, all the little slides, link to another little slide, and come back. That's it. Another activity that you can do, this is more of a kind of a virtual manipulatives. We are doing sorting with Venn diagrams, and so kind of a takeoff on the Dr. Seuss, One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, one of my favorite books. And so if you go to the actual page where you're working, you see the Venn diagram, and it's already been sorted. It hasn't been completed, but you have red versus 1, and where they overlap, obviously it has to be red and 1. And so this little guy is 1, but he's not red, so we would just click and drag him here. This little guy is green and 1, so he doesn't go on the red side. And this little guy is green and 1, so he comes over here. All the ones that are left are 2, so they don't belong anywhere. If they had been 2 and red, like these guys, they could go over on the left-hand side. So another example of this, he has created a 3-circle Venn diagram, and so he's got red, 1, and small, so the things that go in the very middle have to meet all 3 criteria. This is a red, 1, and small. And so then you have to kind of walk through, okay, where these overlap is going to be red and 1, but it doesn't have to be small. So I could drag him there, and you would create this. Now your kids could work on this as a small group on one computer, talking about it, discussing what goes where. Then he has taken it and kind of reversed it on you. He's given you it sorted, and then you have to have your kids label how this is going to work. So this side, I guess, would be green, and this side would be 1. And so where they're green and 1, they go in the middle. At the very end, he's given you some blank Venn diagram with 2 circles and 1 with 3. And then on the very last one, he gives you some fish that you can duplicate and put in your own. So your students can actually create those and share them out, and other kids can do them. I've got a bunch of apples in a tree, and I'm going to write a subtraction problem, but I'm not giving them anything to start with. And so with the subtraction problem, you're going to count all the apples to start with. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I'm going to come up here, double click, type in the number 10, and then I'm going to decide how many I want to remove. Now notice when I click on these, I left these here on purpose, is you can remove these so that every time that you move this, and I would do it before I actually duplicated them, but that way when I drag them, I'm not seeing that actual link of where I got them from. So come here, how many did I remove? I took away 3. So how many are left? For some kids, they're going to be able to do it right off the top of their heads and type in 7. Other kids may have to come over here and count. That's okay. And then you might want them to say, okay, put all the apples back, and maybe you create another problem or 2 problems underneath. Okay, let's take away a different number than 3, and so let's create another number problem. Or you might say, well, how can we write this as an addition problem? And they would reverse it then. All I did was, so that the students couldn't remove the basket or move them around. Well, I left the basket, I guess, out, but you can't move the tree. And so you couldn't drag them. All I did was I went to View, Master, and I put that there. What I really need to do is bring the basket here as well. So the way I would do it, I can right click and I can cut it. I can go to View, Master, right click, paste, and it is now here, but my students can't grab it and move it around on the screen. So okay, the next activity is annotation. You can give your students a picture, add in some speech bubbles, and have them kind of project what the people in the picture would be saying based on what they've learned. So again, how do you do this? Here's the Continental Congress, a picture. A lot of people look like they're talking. So what are they saying? So before you give this to your students, you're going to go to the shapes, you're going to go to the callouts, and you're going to pick which one you want to use, and then you just click and drag. You make it as big as you want. The students, all they have to do is double click and start typing. If you want them to use a smaller font, all you have to do when you're creating it, is make the font smaller. Okay, so once you have one of these, you can then Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste, or right-click copy, right-click paste, bring it over here and put it next to another person. You can also drag it and change the size and the shape of it to make it interesting. Another interesting thing you can do, let me paste another one. So you can come over here, but this isn't really pointing at who I want it to point at, so I can bring it over here and drag. And maybe it's better here. This little one that has a little orange at the end, I can just click and drag, and when this becomes a plus sign rather than a four-headed arrow, I can drag this to wherever I want it to go. Okay? So once you do that, they kind of talk about what these people are saying. They don't really need to know who they are. They just need to kind of know what's going on in the Continental Congress, what they might be talking about, add the pictures. Then they can come over here and they can summarize what really is going on in this picture. This is an example of a drag and drop to label. You would actually click on the word, click on it, drag it over, and match it up to what, the heart that they're trying to label. This is part of a hyperdoc. Hyperdocs are documents that you set up with, they can have videos in them, as this one does. It can have a question after they've watched the video, so they have to actually type and answer it. Then this one has, you've got the picture below. Go ahead and explore the heart. It's got a hyperlink to it, and it's going to take you there. Then they're labeling, and then they come here, they watch another video, and so on. So this is kind of an independent activity that a student would do that you've created. There are lots of them out there on the internet that people are sharing. While your students are doing this, you are walking around, you're interacting with students, you're working with small groups, you're giving students feedback, you're helping them where they're having issues, and you're not standing up in front of the class and lecturing. Another positive thing about these hyperdocs is that you can customize them for different groups of students. So you're differentiating, you can change the videos or you can change the wording and target different students in your class. And even in Google Classroom, you can assign this to specific students within your class by choosing those students and then redoing the assignment and choosing the different file for the different group. Here's another example of a hyperdoc. This was written for Romeo and Juliet. When your students are working in this, they're not in presentation mode. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to click and actually answer questions. So, they're going through here, they're reading, they're clicking on links, they're watching videos, they're answering questions, they're looking at different things. Here's the captioning again. What do you think they're saying to each other? This book takes place in Verona, Italy, so you can go and explore Italy, set that up, answer some questions. Well, if Romeo was going to take Juliet out on a first date today in Verona, where would they go? So you have to go to the map and look at the restaurants and kind of decide where they would go. And so you might even ask, besides where would they go, what might they order? Where might they go for entertainment? And it just goes on. These are really taking off in a lot of classrooms. This is another one that's also a novel, and this one is very detailed in where it was created. It has a click here to a teacher's guide, so it has more information. You can make a copy of this and make it your own. Here's a book trailer on the book. But then it starts talking about realistic fiction, gives you a kind of a couple paragraphs to read. You have to highlight, 3 examples of realistic fiction. Then you come to the next thing. So kids that are working faster or that typically work faster, you can add extra, enrichment type activities in here for them to do so that they're still working while the other kids are getting the basic pages done that you need them to get done. And so that's a hyperdoc. There's a lot more information to them, but we're not going to go into that today. Google Slides. Think of it outside of the presentation. It is a great presentation tool, don't get me wrong, but there's so much more you can do with it. One of the neat things about doing this kind of thing in a Google Slide presentation is it's so much easier to put in the videos and the images and those kinds of things than it is in a Google Doc. I hope you learned something from this, and I'll see you online.